Coated with snow, the hot fields of northeast China that have been busy all year resume the peace of winter. Land is the lifeblood of generations of farmers. As a new year starts, it hides away a secret about harvest and reciprocation from people. This secret will only be revealed after a year of hard work in the autumn. Before that, people have to wait with patience. The different fungi in the woods, freshwater fish hidden in the paddy fields, ripe fruits and sweet wines remind people at all times that outside the city, these fields exist. Farmers have to work and toil hard so that they can have a harvest as well as a peaceful life. For the whole year, people are looking forward to the reunion dinner when they can share their joys and sorrows with family. Since Chinese New Year is in the winter, seasonal local food is served to celebrate the harvest of the past year. This is Ranger Feng Wensheng's last year working at the forestry station. Pruning, trimming and patrolling for fire prevention are jobs that a ranger needs to do before the arrival of Chinese New Year. As the land coverage of the mountain forest is vast, onerous work will continue from the beginning of winter all the way to Chinese New Year. During the 5+ months, the forest will constantly be struck by snow. When this winter finishes, Feng Wensheng, who is 59 now, will reach his retirement age. After finishing the day's work, Feng Wensheng can go back home for Chinese New Year. Far from the forestry station on the mountainside, Mr. Feng can only have lunch in a forest clearing. The lunchbox is still a little warm. It contains the stir-fried wood ears with pork his wife made for him. These wood ears were grown in the wood ear field behind Mr. Feng's house. As is the case for many living at the foot of the mountain, Feng Wensheng and his wife have to spend more than 6 months every year carefully managing their wood ear field, which is not very large. After Mr. Feng retires, wood ears will become the main source of income for his family. Huangsongdian, a small town in Jiaohe, Jilin province, is famous for producing quality wood ears. Almost every household in the town has a wood ear field. It is the best time to grow spring wood ears in June, when there's a big difference in temperature between night and day in the forest region. In just a few days' time, Feng Wensheng and his wife have to mix together the bits of wood, rice husks and bean flour to make vast quantities of bagged wood. In the forest region where logging is forbidden, fewer and fewer wild wood ears grow on fallen wood and rotting trees. Therefore, in these past few years, such bagged wood was widely used to grow wood ears. The growth period of wood ears is less than 2 months. But before that, Mr. Feng and his family have a lot of work to do. thousands of bags have to be put into a steamer in batches. Only after they undergo one night of high-temperature sterilization can Mr. Fung's wife put tiny hyphae into them. Then it's up to Mr. Fung to put them in a greenhouse where they'll ferment for as long as 1 month. The couple will work onerously on these thousands of bags. For close to half a year, Mr. Fung and his wife have to stay inside this hot and stuffy greenhouse. After 1 month, these bags that have finished fermenting are transferred to the field behind the house. Light from the sun and daily irrigation will help these tiny wood ears to grow freely. When the minor heat days come, the season for picking wood ears has arrived. These wood ears, which grow during springtime, are the bunch that have the best quality in a year. Mr. Fung goes up the mountain to work. The job of picking wood ears is left to his wife alone. His wife selects the wood ears that are soft and springy. They just need a few days of sunlight before they turn dry, crisp, hard, light grey and horn-shaped. As long as they're stored properly, there'll be enough for the whole family to eat for the rest of the year, and they can also send a lot to their granddaughter. After this, the wood ears harvested in summer and autumn will be sent to places all over China by way of the huge local edible fungus market. Snowfall around Chinese New Year makes the villages in the mountain forest even more peaceful. Before the arrival of winter this year, in the forest region where logging is prohibited, the shanty towns at the bottom of the mountain were dismantled. Most of the neighbors have already moved away. Mr. Fung and his family are the last remaining residents in the village. They have had a pretty good harvest this year. The wood ear field, that has been meticulously managed, brought in an income of close to 40,000 yuan for the whole family. But Mr. Fung and his wife are accustomed to this frugal and simple lifestyle. The money is left for other uses. In the winter, it is not convenient to go down the mountain to buy food in the forest region. It is only when their daughter's family comes back for Chinese New Year that Mr. Fung and his wife will make a table full of food. Mr. Fung and his wife have made many good dishes especially, but this reunion dinner is still closely related to wood ears. The family does not get many chances to eat together by the hearth. The cramped kitchen is full of warmth at this moment. After retiring, Feng Wensheng will move into a building in the town with his wife. So this Chinese New Year is the last one that they'll celebrate in the forest region, where they've lived for dozens of years.
太辛苦了，这洗脚贪黑的，说心里话，老胖，敬你一杯。
谢谢。
哎呀，家这木耳啊，就一多半儿，多大捡？俺说这岁数都大了，你说捡木耳，这洗脚贪黑的，这热天儿晌午头啊，那老热也在外头捡木耳去。但是季节活，来雨连雨天了，这木耳就瞎了，就得抓紧时间捡。一说都眼泪了。
The hardship the couple has been through in the past year and their attachment to this forest region are things that can be understood only by themselves. After Chinese New Year, they want to use their income for this year to rent land in another village. The wood ears will still bring them even better prospects, and the hard work will continue. An everlasting relationship of equality is maintained between humans and land. The first snow of the year has just passed. Mr. Joe, living in Ardal by her town, is going to finish the final job before winter with the people he has hired in his blueberry field on the hill. After the harvest, the blueberry field is about to enter hibernation as winter comes. Mr. Joe's job is to get all of the blueberry branches, which have already been harvested of their fruits, onto the ground and then cover them with earth. Otherwise, when winter comes, these small branches will be hurt because of frostbite, thus affecting the following year's harvest. After this job is done, it will almost be time for Chinese New Year. The blueberry liquor in the warehouse is ready for drinking. Every year when the blueberries are ripe, Mr. Joe will make a jar of blueberry liquor, and the liquor will be saved especially to be shared with other blueberry growers on the hill during Chinese New Year. In August, at the foot of the Changpai Mountains, the incessant mountain rain has been falling for days. It is now the time to harvest the blueberries. The rain makes Mr. Joe and his wife full of worry, for it's better for blueberries to be collected on a clear day. These ripe blueberries are extraordinarily plump and exuberant. If the rain makes them wet, it's easy for them to split open, and this makes them harder to sell for a good price. In the area of the Changbai Mountains, summers with a lot of rain like this are not often seen. If they go on waiting, the losses in the field will be even greater. Mr. Joe decides he'd better pick the blueberries in spite of the rain. However, the rain is falling harder and harder. The workers he has hired can do nothing but stop and wait. Mr. Joe and his wife were over 40 before they started to manage this blueberry field. More than 10 years has already gone by. They sow in the spring and harvest in the autumn every year. The old couple know the growing rules of blueberries very well, but they can never predict the fickle weather in the area of the Changbai Mountains. This morning, for instance, the sun suddenly came out after a few continuous days of rain. The people who are about to knock off and go home must go back to the field once again. In the area of the Changbai Mountains, blueberries can be found in the wild or grown by farmers. A lot of them grow in the cold highlands of northeast China. Picking them is something that adults and children in the small village can do. The workers that Mr. Joe has hired to pick the blueberries are actually all farmers living at the foot of the mountain. Adults can make money for family expenses in this way. Children can make a little money too while eating the blueberries to their heart's content. A lot of pocket money can be earned after one morning's work. During the few limited clear days, hundreds of kilograms of blueberries are collected. They're sent to the factory in a truck at dusk. As usual, Mr. Joe will save some blueberries, especially this year. He will give some to his relatives and friends living at the foot of the mountain and freeze some for storage. But what he thinks about the most is the jar of blueberry liquor he's saved for Chinese New Year. It's only when the weather gradually cools that Zhongling Fa starts to work in the liquor-making workshop. Even in rural areas, liquor-making workshops like this are now rarely seen. Zhongling Fa, who is 60 now, has been distilling alcohol all his life in this hot, humid and stuffy workshop. His pure grain liquor, which he distills using ancient methods, is very famous in the small town.
这是今年新下的蓝莓，好，怎么样？烧的？
应该挺好，
挺好啊。
当天烧了当天就卖，
供不上了，
供不上。这还有排号的。
你这是纯小烧。现在把白喝，可能你就老式的，就是你这一份了。
别的不多了。好酒，好酒，好酒，就是最好的时候。
再扩一扩啊。 更好，
搁你的越剧泡一泡不更好？
Every year, Mr. Joe uses Zhongling Fa's pure grain liquor to make his blueberry liquor. In Ardalbai He town, every household makes blueberry liquor, but each household uses a different method. Making fruit liquor is something you can do as you please. Mr. Joe puts the blueberries directly into the liquor. The liquor quickly turns a pretty indigo color. In the local households, it's more convenient to preserve blueberries with strong liquors like this. They can be stored for 2 or 3 years, or even longer. As the blueberry field has to be managed, Mr. Joe has spent many Chinese New Years on the mountain. This year, he originally planned on going with his wife to his son's home in Liaoning for Chinese New Year. But as has been agreed upon between Mr. Joe and other blueberry growers, it just so happens that it's Mr. Joe's turn to host the reunion dinner this year. The liquor is ready, and Mr. Joe doesn't want to let them down. So his wife leaves first while he stays on the mountain for a few more days. He decides on the day and then starts preparing the reunion dinner with other blueberry growers. At each Chinese New Year reunion dinner, people like talking about the harvest of the past year and their best wishes for the next year. To share the happiness, the adults would let the children have a taste of the blueberry liquor. The children evidently have no interest in alcohol. they're thinking about the frozen blueberries in the fridge. These frozen fruits, sweet and sour, are presents that the adults especially saved for them in the summer.
来年风调雨顺，
咱们再聚，
产量翻番。
这不发财啊！
哎。
At Chinese New Year, going to a restaurant for a big meal is no longer the best etiquette for Chinese people to entertain guests. Instead, having a meal at home is the best way to show sincerity among best friends. People have to work and wait for a whole year before they share happiness together during Chinese New Year. By the time the spring comes, Mr. Joe will go back to work in his blueberry field. A new year of growing blueberries will be as arduous as before, but he still looks forward to it, as in the past. As soon as Chinese New Year comes, river crabs, which are out of season, are in great demand. Crab farmer Liu Zhenxiang is always trying to get more crabs every day in the frozen hibernation pond. During the hibernation period of nearly 6 months, these crabs do not eat or drink. Even though their sizes do not change, they will accumulate more nutrition in their bodies in order to get through the long winter. Thus, they are now tastier than in autumn. This is a secret about river crabs that people don't know. Every Chinese New Year, Liu Zhenxiang and his wife will make a crab feast exclusive to Panjin. Eating crabs during Chinese New Year is a very old tradition among crab farmers in Panjin. For these people who spend their whole lives raising crabs, a crab feast is their masterpiece. One year's work begins from the rice planting season. Upon receiving a phone call from the hatchery, Liu Zhenxiang has to get on his motorbike to get the baby crabs back, and then throw all of them into the pond at dusk. After 2 years, they will grow big enough to be transported to another pond. The river crabs over 2 years old are already gradually growing up in the paddy fields. They're good at catching fish, shrimps, and microorganisms. They also eat weeds, algae, and corn feed people throw into the fields. Liu Zhenxiang and his wife have been managing this crab field for more than 20 years already. The annual income of the whole family counts on their hard work. In Panshan County, the majority of farmers have to stay beside a crab pond all day long, waiting for these crabs to grow under the golden rice plants. Panjin is surrounded by plentiful seawater in the vast Liandong Bay. A large quantity of marshes, floodland, ditches and ponds came into being because of the crisscrossed rivers. They provide the river crabs with the best breeding grounds and sumptuous food. The saying, "numerous wild animals and fish can be caught easily," was commonly heard throughout northeast China. But in Panshan County, the sentence, "crabs will get into your house by themselves," will be added to this. In Liu Zhenxiang's memories of his youth, every autumn during the 1960s and 70s, the crabs in the fields were so numerous that people couldn't eat them all. Even the farmers' chickens and ducks also ate the crabs. When the autumn comes, it's time to eat crabs. Autumn has just arrived. While Chinese mitten crabs in the south are still growing, The river crabs in Panjin have already begun to molt their shells for the last time. At the Mid-Autumn Festival, as there's a strip of blue and gold between the sky and the paddy fields, the busy moment for catching the crabs comes as expected. After dusk, the crabs climb out onto the banks themselves to search for food. After a quick search with a flashlight, you can easily pick up a bucketful. Before daybreak, these crabs will have been sold out. When all of the crabs have been caught, the time to harvest Liu Zhenxiang's paddy fields will begin. After the autumn harvest, the weather gradually gets cold. The remaining crabs will be isolated from the cold air by the ice layer inside the hibernation pond. Apart from selling a few of them, the most important thing in the whole winter is making a crab feast at Chinese New Year. These crabs have been sold for a good price this year. Liu Zhenxiang had planned on buying a house not far from the city with the money after Chinese New Year and leaving it to his son, who is about to turn 30, for his marriage. But his son doesn't have a girlfriend now. 1 month ago, he broke up with his girlfriend, with whom he'd maintained a long relationship.
你到那儿对，你想啥时候结婚吧？你这个你必须有时间。你告诉我时间结婚时间，我就给你买车时间。我这家和你妈俩这起早贪黑的整这些地，又整房子的，这挣钱有啥？你这挣钱有啥用啊？
那你说这么对我还起早贪黑呢。
啊，你要不要吧？要。你要不要话，我和你妈俩明儿就开始去旅游去了。过年了，我也不熊你了啊！过完正月的，你给我赶紧给我处对象。啊，我和你妈俩都这么。只要人家俩同意，我是啥意见没有。该让我拿钱我拿钱，你这让该让我干啥？我根本我就不管那玩意儿了，这玩意儿也不难管的。现头那个这叫我光黄一个了，我都后老回来，我可不管了。这是不难管的事儿了，也不跟咱也不跟他一辈子。
At this Chinese New Year, each of Mr. Liu's family has their own worries. But as every family wishes that Chinese New Year brings them a good prospect, Mr. Liu's family decides to have a sumptuous reunion dinner. Apart from the stewed crab in soy sauce that they eat on most days, the main dish of a Panjin crab feast is river crab tofu. Even though there is tofu in the name, the ingredients are all river crabs. With an afternoon's work, he and his wife shell over 100 crabs with their bare hands. After they mash the crabs, a cloth is used to filter out thick crab juice, like making tofu. It's then put into a pot for steaming. The name of the dish sounds very rustic, but it tastes extraordinary. Liu Zhenxiang's son has gained chef certification. He tries to be different in the way he cooks crab. He starches and fries the crab, then stir-fries it for a bit in soy sauce before serving it on the table. It can be eaten cold or hot. This is a dish his father likes to enjoy with alcohol. Stewing the crab with the most typical northeastern pickled cabbage is a local rural cooking method unique to Panjin. When the stewed cabbage starts boiling, the crab tofu is just ready. At the place of origin of the ingredients, either out of gifts or through generations of study, people have figured out which cooking methods can make the local food develop a style of their own.
今年就算马上就是过去了，过年到今天的今天，我希望你不是咱们3个人，而是咱4个人到5个人。
不是你过年从阴影再走出来吗？走出来还需要8个月吗？
过年给你1年时间，你啥也不干，出门就是找媳妇去。
我的妈！是。
所以我都告诉我说该找肯定得找，我是不是得给你挑个好的？
不用哎，那啥瞅准不好说，个儿比妈高点也行，不高也行，个儿小的都是浓缩的都是精华。
我们家上文吧，老正经科没有，你看要扯淡吧，我的妈，还磕的是娃娃。我要想处吧，自己就处了。
Hidden in the shell, there must be an extraordinary delicacy. With a favourable climate and geographical advantages, crab farmers who've been working hard day and night have had great rewards, these delicious big river crabs. the northeastern villages can enjoy a period of leisure time during the freezing winter. But the busy season for Chu De-yi and his family has only just begun in the few coldest days before Chinese New Year. For a few days in a row, the family of four has to set off early in the morning to a snow-covered vineyard in the river valley, putting up with the cold wind between the mountains. Qingshe town is close to the border of China's northeast. Mr. Chu's vineyard is on the mountainside along the Yalu River. There are grapes that have yet to be plucked on the vines. Their skins have started to go black. They have frozen to the point that they have shriveled and gone hard. The busy scene of the vineyard in the autumn can be seen from these fruits that were ripe a long time ago. Every year in autumn, the Yalu River Valley area produces a great number of grapes. Around more than 10 years ago, Chu De-yi and other farmers planted crops in the spring and harvested in the autumn. More than half a year's work stopped abruptly in September. But for the past few autumns, the family only picked a token amount to sell. Apart from selling them, they make wine with the grapes, and the rest of the grapes will be left on the vines deliberately. For they are the best fruits in the vineyard that need to be saved for winter. From summer to winter, as the sun shines and wind blows, the frost bites and the snow freezes, and as there is a nearly 60 degrees Celsius difference in temperature between cold and hotness, these frozen grapes are dehydrated. They gradually shrink in the temperature changes in the cold northeast. At the same time, they have the nice smell of almonds. So the wine that they use to make has an impressive flavor endowed by nature. The job of picking frozen grapes has been going on for a few days. For Mr. Chu and his family, every one of these frozen grapes is very precious. As picking can only take place in the early morning, the busy farming season becomes very hard in the freezing cold winter. Every year during the days before Chinese New Year, the whole family feels extremely tired, and they don't even have time to make special purchases for the festival. The frozen grapes they picked on the day are sent directly to the factory. Chu De-yi himself keeps some and extracts grape juice that very night. Sweet yet freezing grape juice can be given to his granddaughter as a drink. It can also be fermented into cold wine, which his whole family will drink over the festival. But his wife is inspired to use some of the juice to make an old snack that she used to make very often in her youth. The cold weather does cause problems to people, but some Chinese New Year foods can only be made when the weather is cold. Freezing cold is also important to some methods of cooking. After chilling overnight, Chu De-yi's wife's grape cake is ready. In the eyes of the younger generation, it's a novel and strange breakfast, but it contains the recollections and emotions of the older generation.
奶奶，你做的最好吃。
葡萄反正还行啊，爱吃，感到就这么说，像天长日久的这玩意儿，像不喜欢。像是产地的东西都是一样，就不那么喜欢了。多少年了，这都30来年了。
84年、85年就开始摆了葡
萄，10多年前那时候，葡萄不好卖，自个儿雇车给人送去，啊，还得给人地瓜、花生，都得
农副产品
打的小粒儿，然后人家才给自个儿雇车，人才能卖进去。卖进去搞那多少给钱不知道。
那时候咱俩多辛苦，骑着自行车上街里去卖菜，哪像现在开着车去卖菜。
Chu De-yi and his wife's stand is set up at the side of the road leading to a local tourist spot. In the past, both sides of the road have had cellar stands of grape growers. After they did this for a long time, the location of every stand became fixed. In the autumn, vehicles head to the tourist spot without cease, and the villagers' grapes sell well. But with the arrival of Chinese New Year, the normally bustling roads become quiet, and business for the couple starts to cool down.
这些葡萄生这点儿，在不在乎咱们自己榨点汁儿，做点糕，给孩子留点。这一年也不看荤，这葡萄卖完了，也过去了这一年了，又一年了，就好来下一年的。
几个月又混到春天，到春天又开始忙了。
As has been the case over the past dozen or so years, they would try to keep the stand up until the last few days of the lunar calendar. Mr. Chu always says that he isn't a good talker, and that if it wasn't for his wife's eloquence, he wouldn't be able to sell many grapes. Compared with the arduous picking time in the winter, the time the couple spends at the stand is more like a precious rest. The frozen grapes all over the mountains have brought the whole family a decent income after all. As the year comes to an end, it's time to go home for Chinese New Year. In the winter in the northeast, Chinese cabbage is quite common. Grape growers are not without wine. Chu's wife makes Buddha hand cabbage with cabbage leaves and pork filling. This is a wish for wealth and a decent life, and is a must-have dish for the Chu family. The children take a sip of the wine that was made in the autumn. The adults are allowed to drink to their heart's content. This is how the Chu family celebrates Chinese New Year. And it is also a way set down by the father, the grape grower, who is gradually getting old.
以后的活就靠咱们家口干了，还干不动的情况下，就是俺们帮着。
这个把你放心吧，以后家一点点俺们就支撑起来。这些活俺们都一点点接手，俺们都干。
People's memories of Chinese New Year always seem to be filled with joy and liveliness. But for the farmers who have to work hard in the winter, Chinese New Year may mean just a fleeting moment of leisure. After all, in the past year, the farmers had to withstand the hot sun, cold wind, heavy rain, and frost before they could harvest. A happy family time like this is truly precious. At the end of the last lunar month each year, the hazelnut grower Wang Wei-he's wife will stir-fry a large wok of hazelnut kernels. The cooked hazelnut kernels are smashed up. Mixed with sugar, it becomes the filling for pancakes. At Wang Weihe's home, dumplings are not that important, and a good number of hazelnut pancakes must be prepared. This is a unique Chinese New Year food passed down by her mother. Mr. Wang Weihe and his wife hurry home before Chinese New Year. After the hazelnuts on the mountains were harvested, they went to work in nearby Fushun and make a little extra money. Chinese New Year is the time for having a break. Apart from hurrying home to eat a reunion dinner, they're worried about their 19-year-old son at home.
爸，你说你这大冷天儿的，你这还骑车还给我送饼呢，多冷啊！这外面。
赶紧吃吧，趁热。哎呀，晚上多穿点，在外头在这炕楼里多穿点。
你就放心吧，爸。
这你妈不就是怕你那什么吗？这烙完饼了，一热乎的给你送
不用惦记，没事的。晚上都吃饭了。
吃吧，趁热赶紧吃，
这
赶紧吃。我说给你少拿2个，你妈说不行，得多拿几个，怕你不够吃。
Their son works as a security guard in a mountain villa not far from home. Wang Weihe had the son at an advanced age, so he loves his son very much. When his son is on a night shift, he often takes some food for him on a motorbike. The hazelnut field on the mountain outside the window is like a heritage left to his son by the parents who are slowly getting older. Around the limit of heat days, the produce and wild fruits around the Tieling area become ripe. During this period, various fruits, including hazelnuts and pears, are ripe. Wang Weihe's hazelnut trees covering the mountains have reached their period for harvest, which is a busy time of the year. Many years ago, people in the small village still relied on farming for a living. When the wild hazelnuts on the mountains were not yet ripe, they collected the branches of the hazelnut trees as firewood. Only in recent years, when hazelnuts became a famous northeastern nut, did they realize that what they were burning in the past were all treasures. Therefore, people started to contract the hazelnut mountains one after another. Every year when the harvest time comes, they watch over the mountains in a shack night and day. When the hazelnuts are ripe, they harvest them all together. This is how the Baoshan hazelnuts came about. Wang Weihe's hazelnuts have become chung, a word the hazelnut growers use to mean the hazelnuts are ripe and there'll be a good harvest. For hazelnuts, there's not necessarily a good harvest every year. The hazelnuts that are chung have full kernels, which hazelnut growers call ganrang. In a hazelnut forest, trying one hazelnut is enough. If the kernel is full, then all of the hazelnuts can be harvested. Wang Weihe takes the harvested nuts out of the mountain forest and puts them in his yard to dry. He insists on completing the screening process himself, though it can be done at a factory. He pours the hazelnuts into water and takes out the shriveled ones floating on the surface. Those that go to the bottom are fully ripe hazelnuts. People here, including Wang, believe shriveled hazelnuts are worthless. Each of the hazelnuts after screening is full. They can be sold at a higher price than other hazelnuts. They are what the whole family counts on. In the winter, they will become a Chinese New Year snack when other families have a reunion. Stir-frying hazelnuts is something that a family must do at Chinese New Year. The nice smell the nuts give off from the iron pot is what Wang Weihe's memories of Chinese New Year are all about. Every Chinese New Year in his childhood, Wang Weihe kowtowed towards his elders to wish them a happy new year. The reward he received for this was hazelnuts from his mother. When he was young, the first time he brought his wife home to spend Chinese New Year, what his mother entertained his wife with and the present she gave to her wife's parents was also hazelnuts. 20 years ago, Wang Weihe and his wife got up early and worked until night every day. They would fry the hazelnuts in a big wok and then take them to town to sell. They could only make 10 or so yuan a day. Thanks to their hard work, the whole family can enjoy a good life today. As it is the source of income for the whole family, they have to exert even more effort. Before the first lunar month ends, Wang Weihe has to go back to the hazelnut forest on the mountains. The earth is gradually defrosting. Wang Weihe has to do heavy pruning work before the hazelnut branches can grow again. After the short period of idleness at Chinese New Year, people have to go back to the mountains, ponds, forests and fields. This piece of land, now defrosting, has become their hope for the coming year. As they're getting old, another year's work has begun. People have never forgotten that only sowing can lead to harvesting. They are still sentimentally attached to the Chinese New Year reunion brought by the harvest. In the ordinary life with trivial matters and even hardships, they await the next Chinese New Year with a good harvest. A couplet framing the door and a New Year painting are true expressions of people's love for the land they live on. Each ancient folk craft is the most primitive longing for life that craftsmen have. At Chinese New Year, Northeasterners' delight of life, national crafts, and the accumulations of civilization are passed down through the generations in a happy reunion, while a simple life is the craft that people are devoting their hearts to.